Hans Gramberg and the European Union official discussed latest developments in Yemen crisis. Government forces clash with Houthi rebels on different fronts in Ma'rib. Gender-based violence against Yemeni women increases in Houthi-controlled areas. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fouad. The United Nations envoy to Yemen, Hans Gramberg, met with EU ambassadors to discuss Yemen crisis. The parties engaged in important conversation on the progress in the political process. EU ambassadors reiterated that they will continue to fully support the vital efforts of the UN envoy in bringing parties to the table to reach a just and inclusive peace. Yesterday, UN envoy to Yemen, Hans Gramberg, said his mission in the country focuses on implementing 2216 resolution. He added that he is not authorized to go beyond this mission. The statements of UN envoy came before the first forum for Yemeni tribes, held in the Jordanian capital, Amman. Dozens of Houthi militants were killed or wounded in fierce battles east of Al Hazm city, the capital of Al Jawf Governorate. A military source added that the battles took place on Al Nudud and Al Alam fronts and led to Houthi losses in combat equipment. Simultaneously, the artillery of the government forces launched an intense bombardment targeting the militia's gatherings and movements, causing great human and material losses. The coalition war plans also launched raids targeting militia reinforcements and resulted in the destruction of 2 crews and a vehicle, killing all those on board. To Ma'rib, where the battle fronts in the south of the governorate have witnessed violent clashes between the government forces and the Houthi rebels. The government forces inflicted heavy losses on the militia after the latter tried to advance to Balk Mountain.
The enemy attacked us last night, but we defended the attack. We broke the enemy attack and killed many of its members. Coalition jets supported us with 3 raids. These raids destroyed the enemy capabilities. Now we are in the front line, spotting any movement of the Houthis.
The coalition carried out 47 operations against Houthis in Ma'rib within 24 hours. The coalition said the operations destroyed 34 vehicles and ammunition storage sites. Meanwhile, more than 280 militia militants were killed. To Taiz, the joint forces advanced to new fronts in the city southwest of Yemen. The joint forces reported that they cleared new areas in Al Barsha area, north of Makbana district. The forces had taken full control of the strategic highlands in Al Barsha and many of the surrounding mountain hills. Dozens of Houthi militants were killed or injured during these battles. On a different note, the Iranian-backed Houthi militia has caused a massive wave of displacement among the population in areas west of Taiz. This came after heavy Houthi bombardment of populated areas. The military media of the joint forces said that the Houthi militia targeted homes of citizens in the liberated villages with dozens of mortar shells. Field sources indicated that the shelling caused mass displacement of tens of families in the villages of Al Hanya and Ghobari. Houthi military escalation has deepened the suffering of internally displaced people. This becomes even hard as winter is set near. Civilians find themselves concerned between Houthi fires and the relentless bitter winter. The following report has more details on this.
With the winter month approaching, the suffering of displaced people in Yemen due to the war continues to worsen. Many people do not have the clothing, blankets, and other basic items they will need to stay safe and warm, especially those living in shelters that are not equipped to protect them from Houthi artillery shelling. More than 45,000 people have been displaced by the fierce fighting in Ma'rib as cold weather sets in. Families are displaced for the second time in the 7-year civil war and have nothing but very few blankets to keep them warm during the cold nights. Since the beginning of 2021, the Houthi militia has launched a wave of attacks. The most violent have been in Ma'rib Governorate, using various internationally prohibited methods of warfare, including bombing, forced displacement, and abuse. Those violations have taken the heaviest toll on displaced persons, killing dozens of displaced people and forcing thousands of families that were already displaced to flee again. Most of the displacement camps have no humanitarian services, no schools, no hospitals, or any other services. IDPs, meanwhile, face high levels of food insecurity and few services and livelihood opportunities. Camps have been subjected to artillery shelling of various kinds, with women and children accounting for most of the casualties. Those violations have resulted in an unspeakable humanitarian disaster. Hundreds of families have lost their shelters as dozens of dwellings and tents have been burned down. Various kinds of physical and psychological harm have been inflicted upon hundreds of displaced persons who have endured days and nights of siege by the Houthi militia and ended up without a roof over their heads after fleeing the repeated bombardment. Entire families flee and return with the ebb and flow of violence. Returning may mean going back to a damaged or destroyed house. Some people have even returned to home areas near the front lines because of the high costs associated with their displacement. Still, there is no proper shelter, no place to sleep, not enough blankets. These people have nothing. A lasting peace might enable people to return to a normal life and allow IDPs, who in some cases have been displaced for years, to achieve sustainable solutions.
Houthi wheel of terror has exceeded even the liberated areas. Their arms are plotting to destabilize Yemen through terror attacks. The security forces in Aden have revealed the identities of suspects accused of involvement into recent deadly attacks in the southern city. More on the story is within the following report.
2 months of investigations over 2 attacks that rocked the temporary capital of Aden. Security forces revealed the identities of suspected perpetrators. Counter-terrorism forces captured suspects linked to the first attack that targeted Ahmed Lamlas, the governor of Aden, with a bomb attack that killed 6 people while the governor, along with the Minister of Agriculture, escaped death. The Supreme Security Committee said the attack on the governor was orchestrated and carried out by a Houthi-funded terror cell. The other attack took place on October 30 at Aden's airports, claimed the lives of 5 civilians and injured more than 40 people. The Security Committee said this was orchestrated and carried out by terrorists belonging to another Houthi-backed cell led by a man called Saleh Haddad. The committee posted video footage in which the men admitted that they were working for the Iran-backed Houthi rebels. They said they have traveled to the capital Sana'a, where they were hosted by senior Houthi leaders. The authorities urged residents to report information that could lead to the terrorists being apprehended. Yemeni security forces identified the suspects after weeks of intelligence gathering that managed in the end to penetrate a major terror network which has been financing, equipping and managing terror cells in the southern areas. According to analysts, the discovery of these cells is a crucial victory for Iran's security forces, which could lead to the discovery of other cells working to destabilize the country.
To the west coast of Yemen, where the joint forces removed hundreds of mines planted by Houthis in the villages and farms southeast of Hais. Masan Project for the Mining in Yemen announced it has removed more than 1,500 mines during the first week of December. The total number of mines that has been cleared since the launch of the Masan Project in Yemen reached so far 291,931 mines. All were planted by the Houthi militia throughout Yemen. Violence against women increased over nearly a decade in Yemen, especially in Houthi-controlled areas. Women are suffering more and more because of that war. More in the following report.
Gender-based violence is a very sensitive issue. Women and girls do not report violence due to the fear of being killed, detained, or exposed to further violence. This issue aggravates more in strictly conservative societies like Yemen. Many forms of violence prevail in Yemen: beating, verbal abuse, handcuffing girls, depriving girls of education, restricting their movement, and detention. Women and girls in Yemen experience different types of violence because of the armed conflict. Human rights activist Noura Al-Jarwi estimates that between December 2017 and December 2020, Houthi detained around 1,100 women. 376 women are incarcerated across Yemen. 57 of them have completed their sentences, yet are still being detained. Protests by women have been a target since Houthi consolidated their control in Sana'a. The specific targeting of women by Houthis peaked when Al-Zainabiyat units were created, whose responsibilities include searching women and homes, teaching women the Houthi beliefs, as well as maintaining security and order in women's prisons. Estimates by most Yemeni civil society organizations place the number of women detained by Houthis at over 1,000. These are individual lives destroyed, mothers and children separated, entire families permanently damaged. The Iran-backed Houthis have crossed a red line in their treatment of women. Their mistreatment of women is well documented with a September 2021 report from the Yemeni Network for Rights and Freedoms listing the group's violations and abuses committed during more than 6 years of war. In its report, the network said the Houthis committed 6,476 human rights violations or abuses against women between January 1, 2015 and June 1, 2021. It also recorded 770 cases in which women were arrested or kidnapped by Houthis and 195 cases of forced disappearances. According to the report, the Houthi militia subjected 70 women detained in its prisons, including secret prisons, to cruel and degrading treatment, including torture. Women detainees issue seems to see no future, and the longer the conflict continues, the more widespread crimes and violations against women will occur. Peace is the only way out for them to have a normal life and be able to raise a normal future generation.
Coming next. Major cities in Yemen witness angry rallies over sharp currency decline and high prices.
راتب الواحد 120 ألف والكيس الدقيق ب18 ألف والكيس السكر اليوم ب20 ألف. كم يعني بيعطي هذا الراتب كامل كيس سكر وكيس دقيق؟
المواطن اليمني يعيش في أزمة إنسانية وغذائية مؤلمة من غلاء الأسعار وفحشة الأسعار وغلاء الصرف والعملة الأجنبية في البلد.
حالتي الحين حالة لما أخرج لما ندفنش القيلة ما نقدرش ناكل الأكل داخل ما إحنا الحاجة صعبة.
Welcome back. The Yemeni Oil Company Syndicate called upon the government to stand by the oil company by restoring its activity. The syndicate required the government to end any conflict in interests among oil-related companies. The syndicate accused the government during an extraordinary meeting in Hadramaut of mishandling oil trading and circulation in the market. It warned that preventing the oil company's activity and withdrawing its powers would have a catastrophic impact on the national economy. In Taiz, hundreds of citizens took to the streets in a protest denouncing the deteriorating economic situation and the high cost of living. Protests were accompanied by a complete closure of shops, including banks and bakeries. To that end, the Yemeni President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi issued a presidential decree concerning the central bank. The decree includes reforming the board of directors and that all operations of the bank will put for auditing after being moved to Aden. Yemen has been marred within the past 7 years in a harsh economic situation because of war. The situation is now reflected on all aspects of life, basically in hard currency and food supplies. The Fung report has more details on this.
The Yemeni currency continues to tumble against foreign currencies in liberated areas, with relative stability in areas controlled by the Houthi militia, amid calls to speed up the return of the government to the interim capital Aden to take more effective measures to stop the deterioration. Despite the recent measures taken by the Central Bank of Yemen in Aden, this did not achieve results to stop the deterioration of the currency, including security measures, stressing local banks and closing exchange companies that violate the bank's instructions. At a time when the Houthi militias imposed a parallel banking sector in their areas of control, while continuing to prevent the circulation of the latest cash editions issued by the central bank in Aden, the fees for internal transfers from areas under the control of the government to areas under the control of the militias increased to 100%. Economists say that the stability of the rial exchange rate in areas controlled by Houthi militias does not reflect the reality of the economic situation, as the rebels imposes the exchange rate by force and encourages its banking companies to withdraw hard currencies from government-controlled areas. The deterioration of the Yemeni rial exchange rate in recent months has led to a collapse in the purchasing power of the population, as the powers of commodities funded by the central bank have risen. The crisis comes amid constant Yemeni accusations to the international community of overlooking and even planning with different divisions of Yemen into areas ruled by different militias instead of helping the country restore the Yemeni state. Things will continue to deteriorate and people's suffering will aggravate, while the government remains inefficient to take actions.
The National Committee Against Coronavirus announced 9 new cases of the COVID-19 in 4 governorates. Committee officials said on Twitter that 4 cases were recorded in Hadramaut, 3 in Aden, 1 in Bayda, and 1 case in Shabwa. Also 4 recovered cases were recorded and 1 death. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 10,034, including 1,955 deaths and 6,917 cases of recovery. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Hans Gramberg and the European Union officials discussed latest developments in Yemen crisis. Government forces clash with Houthi rebels on different fronts in Maghreb. Gender-based violence against Yemeni women increases in Houthi-controlled areas. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.